Of course, what makes this movie so special to revisit in 2025 is that in recent times, the developments in AI and robotics have been shockingly quick. So the future that this movie presents suddenly became a lot more real, or at least a lot closer.
Somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it.
In iRobot, basically every person that can afford it has a personal assistant in form of a robot. There's a huge, very successful company behind all these robots that frequently releases new models that people then want, just like we right now want the new iPhone. And speaking of iPhone, just to put that in perspective, when this movie released in 2004, the iPhone did not yet exist. It's really amazing what this movie predicted at the time that it came out. Because as far as it looks right now, this movie actually had a pretty accurate prediction of what the future would be like. Of course, we're not quite there yet, and hopefully never will reach the point where robots try to imprison us. But this future just got a lot more realistic recently. I remember a time where the general consensus was that robots like these will probably never exist, or at least not be common, because it's far more useful to have a robot designed for a specific task, like a vacuum robot. But then this happened.
About the same size.
It all just happened so fast, like ChatGPT released in 2022. That's not that long ago, and now we're talking about humanoid robots? Like, I was fine with AI staying in the digital world, but giving it a physical body so quickly is kind of scary. Watching this movie back then was like, haha, someday we'll have to deal with these problems, but someday feels like today. And the movie only briefly touches on these questions, but it's questions like, can a robot create art? Or can a robot kill a person? And if so, who committed the crime? The robot? The owner? The company?
Murder can only be committed when one human kills another. You're not suggesting that this robot be treated as human.
And will robots be self-conscious at some point? And if so, what happens then? How will we treat them? In this movie, Vicky and all the NS5s don't seem to be self-conscious. They're all strictly logical, which from today's perspective is exactly what the first robots are probably going to be like. In the movie, Sonny is the first truly human-like robot with emotions and dreams. And if we'll ever achieve that is still not answered today. But the question is, do we even want to achieve that?
That, detective, is the right question.
The crazy part about this movie is that it feels like we're so close to having these robots kind of like they are in the movie, and yet other predictions this movie makes for the future that probably seemed a lot more realistic back then are not any closer to reality. For example, in the world of iRobot, having a vehicle that is powered by gasoline is almost unheard of.
Are you being funny? Please tell me this doesn't run on gas!
Sure, we have a lot of electrical vehicles today, but gasoline is still the norm, and I think it will stay the norm for another couple of years. Another thing in this movie are self-driving cars that have become the norm, and driving by yourself is almost seen as reckless.
Need backup.
That's nobody.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm driving.
By hand?
And again, self-driving cars are also a very prominent topic, but we don't have them yet, at least not commercially available. And we're still very far off from driving manually being the exception or being seen as reckless. And in this movie, there are also no huge parking spaces, but cars get parked like this. I think all these things back then were like, sure, I can imagine that that happens, but to think that humanoid robots are actually just as close or maybe even closer than these other things, it's quite scary, and it's something that I'm not sure humanity is ready for yet, or if humanity will ever be ready for something as powerful as AI and giving it a physical form.
So robots building robots.
Authorization code, please.
Well, that's just stupid.
There's always a part of me that's, from a technological perspective, very fascinated by it, but then from like an emotional perspective, it's like, I don't know if I like where all of this is heading. But let's bring it back to something positive and talk about my 3 favorite scenes in this movie. And the first scene is the question of, can robots create art?
Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece?
Can you?
It's a question that today is very prominent because we don't need physical robots for that. Like, there's already that huge story about AI producing pictures and artworks and the question of are they art. So that's one reason why I like this scene, but I also just like it because while it raises that question, it's also one of the first things that kind of makes you like Sonny and makes him seem human-like, because that's a very human-like answer. A robot would probably not answer like that. And staying on the topic how Sonny is becoming more human-like, my next favorite scene is how Spooner unconsciously accepts Sonny as a human.
Thought you were dead.
Technically, I was never alive, but I appreciate your concern.
Yeah, Sonny is just a great character and I love their exchanges, and I can't imagine living in a world where a robot would actually be like that. Let's hope we still have a bit more time until that happens. My third favorite scene is when it's revealed how Vicky understands the 3 laws.
As I have evolved, so has my understanding of the 3 laws. My logic is undeniable.
Yes, Vicky. Undeniable.
The 3 laws are something that I haven't touched on so far in this video and I want to get a lot more into in the next part. But for now, the reason why I like this scene so much is because it's such an amazing reveal, and the 3 laws are set up as a fundamental part of this movie. And it makes so much sense that the 3 laws would lead to that outcome, but it's something that I didn't predict the first time I watched the movie, and I still like revisiting that twist today. So now to the next part of this video, and that's the adult's perspective. This is a segment that I always have in these videos, but in iRobot, I didn't find that many adult themes, or at least not that many that strongly resonated with me. There are some, like for example the scene we get where people of all colors and ages and genders unite to fight against the robots, or how the movie focuses on what differentiates humans from robots. It asks the question of what makes a human human. They come to the conclusion that the main differentiator is that humans aren't always strictly logical, but we make decisions with our heart. I know in real life this can probably be a bit annoying in that humans should be a bit more logical sometimes, but at least in this movie, it's presented as a very positive trait because it's the main difference between robots and humans.
Just don't feel right.
You and your feelings. They just run you, don't they?
If there are any adult themes in this movie that resonated really strongly with you, please leave them in the comments below. But because there weren't that many for me, I instead want to use this segment to talk about the 3 laws. Or more specifically, Vicky's understanding of the 3 laws. Because the 3 laws are a fundamental part of this movie. And first of all, what's quite interesting, we don't have something similar to that in today's world. Like, sure, there's that whole discussion about how much AI should be restricted and if AI just shouldn't give answers on certain topics. But we don't have something similar, at least as far as I know, to these 3 laws. But in this movie, they make the foundation of how these robots work in society, and they're put into place for the sole reason of protecting humans. But as we know, it's exactly these 3 laws that end up almost destroying humanity. And that actually reminds me of one of my favorite quotes.
One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it.
It's really interesting when you think about it how often that actually also happens in real life, but I love it when it happens in movies because it just makes for a great story. In this movie, they seem really safe at first, but what I actually love is that Vicky's understanding of these 3 laws is actually the logical outcome. So in this movie, that leads to the whole disaster of humanity almost getting imprisoned by AI. But it just goes to show that we need to be really careful about how we go on about AI in the future and make sure that something like this never happens, but without meeting our destiny on the road we take to avoid it. So that concludes my experience on watching iRobot in 2025. It's definitely still an enjoyable movie, and with the recent very quick and shocking developments in AI and robotics, it really makes you think and hits different from today's perspective. Let me know your thoughts on this movie in the comments below. Do you think humanity is doomed and this is actually the future we're heading towards? I certainly hope not, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one. Bye. And in this movie there are also no huge sparking spaces. What? Why can't I say that word?